get to put our regalia on.
Good morning, everybody on Facebook, and thank you for joining us for our Sunday Metaphysical service. I wanted to take a minute before we start our homily today to talk about the upcoming Spirit Fest, the Shift Fair that we will be having at the Quality Inn in Oneonta, New York on October 29th and 30th. And that is a wonderful chance for you to come see who we are, what we do, and all the beautiful, wonderful, amazing, loving practitioners who are delivering healing services and messages, and vendors that are selling crystals and aroma, all that wonderful good stuff that everybody loves. So free workshops as well for those who come to the Shift Fair. So thank you for joining us today.
Shift New York.
Shift New York. What's the website?
ShiftNewYork.com.
ShiftNewYork.com if you want to get advanced tickets or just check out more information about it. Okay, so today the title of the homily I received so divinely is called The Divine Black Sheep. So I'm going to talk today about many different black sheep in history and why the free thinker is so critical to our evolution of consciousness throughout history and as we move forward into the future. And every family has a black sheep, and we are a family of them at ISD. And I'll talk about why in just a little bit. So how the black sheep are the ones that change the world is a very important piece for us to consider. And when we look back at all of the powerful leaders of all time, they are the ones who went against the grain of the typical mundane. Okay? Very fearless. There's lots of interpretations of what a black sheep is. And I'm just going to give a basic one that I found online, and it is a term for the disfavored odd member of a group. Okay? Here at ISD, we are all what was viewed in the past as black sheep. Why? Because we refused to believe that we had to go through another for our own divine source connection. And here we are building a community of people who are able to do that and are learning to do that with the beautiful meditation circles we have and the services we have. We have so many opportunities for people to be able to do that on their own spiritual path, in the path that resonates for them, not necessarily the one that is the herd mentality, if that makes sense, or herd mentalities. So it's very similar to Yeshua's true teachings. And I say in the past because I see so much evidence of that changing every day. We are part of a community of way showers that are paving a new way, a way for spiritual freedom that not everyone on this earth has. So I'm so thankful to be able to have that where I live and in this beautiful community. I was always a bit of a rebel. I was never really a disrespectful person, but I always felt confused by earth rules and systems. Why children stand in lines when adults don't have to, for example. Why you have to stand up for this or sit down for that, as a kid. Why children sit at desks in rows, for example, okay? And most of you know I was in public education for 20 years and I was a principal. And there's a meme out there, and it's really powerful, and it shows the telephone from the 1800s when it was first invented, and the telephone now. And then underneath it shows the classrooms of the 1800s and the classrooms of now. And it's very interesting, and a lot of the things that were happening in education to change this went backwards because of COVID and having to sit 6 feet in rows again. So there's lots of reasons why we do the things we do. We are creatures of habit and comfort zones. So this is not a homily of judgment, but one of discernment, and the importance of discernment to say, this does not resonate for me. What if we go this way instead? Okay? So the herd mentality kind of always made me a little bit uncomfortable. Who thought this up, and why do people just blindly follow some of these things, right? As a kid, I hated reading. I really did. And I love it now. I love it now. When I found metaphysics, I had a whole new love for reading that I never had before. I had these books in my closet, even though I hated reading as a kid. My parents had bought, it was almost like a series of encyclopedias, and there was like 20 little white books. And each book was on a hero, on a person. So there was one of Dr. Martin Luther King, there was one of Mother Teresa. Does anybody remember those books? Yeah. They were really amazing, and they were like little cartoons, so they had pictures with them too. So they were very and I kept going back to them, and I had this memory come in meditation while I was writing this homily, and I thought how powerful that was to learn about those people in history, to be able to say that we don't necessarily have to follow what everyone else is doing. So the majority of what I'm going to talk about today has to do with a beautiful movie that's out right now, and it's called Mission Joy. Has anybody seen this? It's about the friendship of Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama. And it's like $4 on Amazon. So if you want to get it, it's definitely worth the money. And for those of you who don't know a lot about either of them, some of you know more than others, Desmond Tutu was appointed by Nelson Mandela, who was another black sheep, right? He was imprisoned for his teachings and for his way of love. So both of these men were way showers and change makers. And Desmond Tutu was appointed by Nelson Mandela to be the chairperson of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, right? Isn't that what black sheep do? We were looking for truth and reconciliation. So I thought that was such a beautiful title that he got. And anyway, he won the Nobel Peace Prize for his involvement in resolving and ending apartheid, which, for anybody that doesn't know the history too much of apartheid, it was a very small government made of Caucasians who were ruling the entire African American class at the time. And they finally, Desmond Tutu was, really an activist and saying, why are we doing this? So he helped to start the boycotting and things that happened to shift apartheid out of existence. So Nelson Mandela and Desmond Tutu were doing their thing in South Africa, and the Dalai Lama at the time, it wasn't too far different time period. The Dalai Lama was basically kind of elected because of his spiritual attainment to be the leader of Tibet. And the Chinese government were coming in and invaded Tibet. And instead, while all these people were dying, these poor innocent people were dying, the Dalai Lama said, no, we are not going to choose the violent way. We're going to choose nonviolence. And he moved as a shepherd all of the people out of Tibet to safety. So these are very powerful black sheep who refuse to go with the herd mentality of warring and just following what people say we should follow. Okay, so the Dalai Lama, most of you probably know this, he was a Tibetan Buddhist. He is a Tibetan Buddhist in many dimensions. I had the privilege and beautiful gift of being able to visit the Tibetan Buddhist Center in Walton. I don't know if anybody knows about it. It's one of the most beautiful temples on top of the mountain. And just to kind of give you an example, some already know that the Dalai Lama, when the Dalai Lama passes out of the physical body, the spirit then chooses a baby for the soul to be reincarnated into. And that baby is then found by the Buddhist monks and trained as an enlightened Buddhist master, told, you are a reincarnated enlightened Buddhist master, welcome back kind of thing, right? So think about that for just a minute. The thing I did not realize is that the Rinpoches were also a very high spiritual attainment in Tibetan Buddhism. They also have the same process. So there's a beautiful movie called The Unmistaken Child, where you can watch and see the process of how a Rinpoche passes and they go to find the baby, and the whole process. It's really, really beautiful. The reason I'm talking about that is, imagine being raised with that high of a regard, that everybody are looking at you as this amazing, spiritually enlightened being, okay? How amazing and cherished you are by the entire community. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, imagine growing up in poverty, in severe trauma, and being told you're not good enough no matter what you do. what a spectrum we have on this planet of Earth School, right? So there's this instinctual feeling that we have, and this is that black sheep in us, right? Of needing to rebel against situations when love is not the theme. An example of how the good of all on this planet and unity among nations, families, and communities is still being worked through. An example of our inner divided self that is healing and ascending. So these two change agents not only shifted paradigms of choosing nonviolent approaches and non-typical approaches, they were loud activists who empowered entire nations to not follow blindly. And their example will be felt for generations. Warring mentalities do not exist in peaceful, harmonious communities, in peaceful, harmonious psyches. So when we live in societies or communities or these group situations that are divisive and cruel, we put our heads up like that bird, right? And we're looking around and we're like, something's not quite right here. And that is the theme of the black sheep. So really powerful moment in this movie if you choose to watch it at the end. And I think it's one of the most powerful moments of the generation. Desmond Tutu is an archbishop, right? He's Christian, and Dalai Lama is Tibetan Buddhist. Desmond Tutu is invited by the Dalai Lama into his private chambers where most people don't go into, okay? And of course, their friendship and him feeling so honored by this, he's talking to his daughter, Desmond, who's also a minister. And he's having that moment where, should I offer him communion, bread and wine? Should I offer him bread and wine? He has not said out loud that he accepts Jesus as his savior and blah, blah, blah. Should I do this? So he's having this very powerful moment. And he became the black sheep in that moment. And he offered the Dalai Lama communion. And it was such a powerful, I have goosebumps. It was such a powerful moment of unity and breaking some of that herd mentality. So today we listened to Amazing Grace with story so beautifully did without words today for us. And I've always loved this song, but there's always been a part of the song that's been hard for me, that I've felt dissonance with. And the black sheep uses very careful discernment, right? We don't have to judge, we don't have to break apart, we don't have to be mean or cruel, but we just listen for what doesn't feel right. So when you think about being raised as an enlightened master or being raised in trauma, let's break this down a little bit. Are we wretches and weary and sinners? Or are we beautiful, magical, and divine, enlightened masters, reincarnated? Peggy O'Mara said, the way we talk to our children becomes their inner voice. What we are told becomes our inner voice. We create our realities from our inner voice. We must be mindful about who we choose to believe when someone outside of us tries to tell us who we are. Take what resonates, as always. Okay. So let's talk about family dynamics and black sheep. And I know there's some counselors in our ISD congregation who are very familiar with family counseling therapy. Okay. And what family counseling therapy, the gist of that is that when one person in the family tries to go against the grain of what's expected by the family, it makes the family uncomfortable because that's the comfort zone. That's how they relate to each other. That's how they know each other. So when somebody starts to follow a different path or make decisions that are not that, it can become quite ostracizing. And we think about how we do that in society as well, right? If somebody does something in the workplace, if somebody does something in society or breaks a law, we tend to ostracize them instead of, a lot of times it's when they need our love the most. So it comes back to those habitual patterns and comfort zones, and the black sheep kind of push those triggers in us, don't they? The one in me and the one in you. We talked about this earlier in our service, that Yeshua ben Joseph was one of the greatest black sheep of all time, right? Think about the time he lived in and what he was doing. teaching others how to experience their own direct source connection. Ascension practices. He was willing to die for it. He felt it was so important. However, he didn't fight against it. And I think that's the most powerful lesson, the difference between the black sheep and the divine black sheep, right? The divine black sheep, just like he said, is not going to complain about or cause drama about what's wrong. He's going to face the sun and build what is right. Build what is right. The divine black sheep sees and helps to build the new in nonviolence and love. Okay? And we can be the black sheep in our thoughts as well, to say no to what is not love. The black sheep in us empowers us to own thought forms that are more herd-like, that are gossipy, that are fear-based, that are drama. Our neural pathways are like planes on autopilot. The habit, the sheep going down the path that always goes down, that just keep picking the same route. The black sheep sees it and stops it and picks a new way, a new habit, a new dialogue, to eventually become the shepherd and master of the inner universe of all thought form, the shepherd of love. Really funny story, as I started receiving this homily, a good friend of mine says, my daughter recently wants to buy the sweater that Princess Diana wore, the black sheep sweater. Has anybody seen that or remember that? So go home and Google Princess Diana's black sheep sweater. She was a master at making these symbolic gestures, right? Of going against the grain without her having to kind of, you know, who knows how much trouble she may have gotten into for wearing that sweater. But it was really funny because it reminded me so much of her and her legacy as a black sheep. The Buddha, for those familiar with the story of the Buddha, he was also a black sheep, right? He grew up as a prince, Siddhartha Gautama. He grew up as a prince and he rebelled and left the palace and eventually found enlightenment. So I am saying, embrace that inner black sheep in you and the part of you that sometimes follows and that sometimes leads. Some of you heard me say this week. Sometimes we're Robin and sometimes we're Batman. And it's okay. It's okay. It's okay to be both. That's the understanding that we are all of these things. We are all of these things. We are all on that ascension path. And then we become the shepherd and realize that we are all one. There is never a separation anyway. The true second coming. Okay, so earlier this week, I also heard the phrase, a wolf in sheep's clothing, right? And then it kept coming through. And what does a wolf in sheep's clothing do, right? They sit with the white sheep and they're just kind of stirring the pot, pushing buttons, doing things to kind of go against the shepherd. But what does the black sheep do? It stands out. I'm here. What if we go this way instead? And it doesn't apologize for speaking the truth. And it does it respectfully. And it does it, you know, I'm here. I'm not hiding. The black sheep is so transparent, right? There's something really beautiful in that. All right. So one of the beautiful things about ISD, and I want to thank the legacy that Sue and Diana and Jim are leaving here, is that they did exactly that, facing the sun, right? They weren't tearing apart anything that may have felt dissonant. They built a new way. They built a new way. And congratulations for that legacy. That's phenomenal. To see a system that might not be exactly working anymore or fit the older generations, to build something new. To build something new. All right. And the beautiful part about all this is that when we rise into the shepherd, we start to see the other shepherds in the higher realms, right? And then we look at each other and we laugh at each other telepathically and say, I was the black sheep at one point too. I was the black sheep at one point too. Okay. So as we start to come close to the holiday season, next month, when we start to sit around the table at Thanksgiving and for Christmas and all those pieces, this is just that reminder to honor all aspects of your family, right? The wolf in sheep's clothing, the sheep, the black sheep, and the shepherds. And remember that we are all one. We all have those aspects within us that we are healing, that we are rising out of and into. And divine neutrality, peace, and love, and not being triggered are attributes of the shepherd. The one who is blind and now can see that we are all one. Okay? So there's this polarity that occurs, and imagine neutrality in the middle of requiring others to be and do certain things. And on the other end of that spectrum is the rejecting them, okay, if they don't do and be those things. And we can be the one in the middle that doesn't require, that can gently plant seeds of love, but that doesn't reject either for any previous requirements that we had of them. So enjoy your holiday season, and whatever you're wearing for Halloween, whether it's a wolf or whatever it is, just remember that we all have those faces at different points, and we all have the ability to be the shepherd and the ascended master as well. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Facebook. Have a great, wonderful day.